So start with apologies. I've had apologies from Councillors Cox, Mottershead, Councillor Capozzi is in finance, Councillor McAravey. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Berger.
Perfect. So the minutes from the last meeting, we'll take those as agreed. Agreed. Any declarations of interest? There is no public participation. Mark doesn't count. So any questions from what we just saw, agenda item 6, the budget? Pretty happy with that?
Chair, so can I give a bit of an overview, really, if that's okay, just on that?
Sorry, yeah, it was just because we just had it in there, yeah.
If that's okay. So just in terms of the budget papers that have been presented before this committee, I just wanted to make the point that we have a common budget covering report for all 3 overview and scrutiny committees, but the appendices that have been appended to this report only relate to the remit of this scrutiny area. So if any members were concerned that some were missing or so on, that is why. The idea is to try and focus your attention on those areas that are really part of the remit of this scrutiny committee. But if there are any questions either on the presentation or on the content of those papers, I'm very happy to sort of help answer them alongside colleagues from across the corporate leadership team. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions that relate to this committee as opposed to sort of general comment. I'm interested to know if there is a figure, and I appreciate you may not have it off the top of your head, around how much we invest in our community assets, our event playgrounds, community centres, town halls. You could bring Bury, I guess, and how much those assets cost, and how much of that is discretionary. So a supplementary question.
So in terms of the investment, I think really in terms of what we're putting into those assets, I think the best thing that can give a sense of that is really our reporting on the capital programme. So that's something we bring before committee on a quarterly basis. On the capital side, it will really show you what we're spending on those assets and give you an idea of the investment from a capital perspective. In terms of the associated running costs, again, we do have budgets and running costs for all of those assets. We tend to report to committee at quite a high level, so you may not see that individual detail. As far as the detailed budgets are concerned, for the actual final set of budget papers that will come back to scrutiny in February and then go to cabinet, you will actually see those budgets set out on a sort of service by service. You will be able to see that. But for those particular areas that you've mentioned, I can arrange for it to be circulated to committee based on current running costs, if that's something you find helpful. But I don't have a figure to hand that I could quote.
What I would like to make is, obviously, with financial pressure, where are the tipping points? And obviously some of our discretionary expenditure, is that matched by the income generated or the value added by having that community engagement or involvement or facility or what have you?
I think there's a variety of arrangements on that point. So some of those discretionary services will have an income stream associated with it, which is helping support the delivery of that. Some services there may be more of effectively a subsidy for those services because of the value that it adds to the community. So there is I think it varies. I mean, I know we have some services, and some of the services, some of the comments on that front.
If we could take that as an action point, Chair, to make some figures.
Yes. I had a couple of questions just on this one, if that's okay. One of them was, is the Grove Hill Veg Playground pitch bigger than the others? Is that why that one's having a bigger increase? Might be a...
Yeah, the Grove Hill pitch is newer and larger and more usage.
I was also the higher risk activities on there that in terms of the charges going forward, such as the quad biking, the zorbing, there was one other. There's no increase in the fee for those. Well, I was wondering why that is, especially when they're seen as higher risk. I was wondering if we're considering sort of pinch points and wanting to keep other accessible things free, why they weren't one in consideration for maybe increasing.
So for those ones, they're kind of like add-ons to the hire for birthday parties and the like, and they're quite at a cost. So you can't just go and do zorbing and quad biking. That is part of the birthday package. So because people are paying to hire the facility for birthday or other types of parties, they're kind of like add-ons to that. So that's why we, given the cost of those, we felt it prudent to leave them as they were when the other charges were going up.
Yeah, I was wondering why I hadn't heard of people just going quad biking there. That makes sense now. And the price. Sorry, does anyone else? I've got a few. The price of dangerous animals and dog breeding, the qualified officer inspections. I'm wondering why they're not higher, really, because that's obviously quite a contentious thing. We don't really want to be handing out these licenses to anyone, and £100 isn't much for the inspection. I was just wondering if that was something we could increase, because we need people to be serious about animal welfare.
So I think we don't have representation from that relevant service, but I'll take that comment away when we put the final proposals for fees and charges for next year.
Thank you. And then likewise on that one, it was a question of how many animals for exhibition and performing we have in the borough, because that also strikes me as really unethical. Less of a budget comment, more of a could we look into getting rid of that licence completely, not allowing it. Take that from my list. And I wanted to know more about hypnotism. We don't charge for hypnotism. I thought that was interesting in the budget. Because it's there. And the hikes, I was looking at the garage ones. So the premium garages weren't going up much in terms of percentage compared to other ones. I was wondering why that was, and if just some sort of fees in terms of going up, say the officer inspections, garage increases, could we then not increase, say, street trader fees as much? Because obviously we want to encourage business, and we've lost our market in the middle of town. It'd be nice to encourage more in. I just wonder if that was something that could be looked into.
Again, I'll take those back to proposals.
Thank you. That was all my questions. Sorry, everyone. Are there any? Councillor Banks.
Yeah. So just a point of clarification on Appendix G, line 15, the long children roof. What roof? Long children? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, this is in the capital programme.
Oh yes, sorry, beg your pardon. Yeah, Appendix G. And it's line 15. It just says long children roof, but it doesn't say the roof. It just seems a lot of money to spend on a roof.
I think I'll need to take that away.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I can get the details of the work circulated. I'm afraid I don't have that circulated to committee.
And then I just have one further question, right? And I can't find the page myself, so we're going to be like that's about his wife here. Somewhere in here it says about, oh no, it doesn't. In the later papers, when we're talking about moving to a grant base for our key services, and we refer, I think one of them is Age UK. It just came to mind, I've crossed over reports, I do apologise, but it is relevant to this one. Where you've got the list of charges that we make, there's no charges listed for use of our communal spaces, like in our sheltered accommodation. And I wondered if we could make a charge for using those facilities. And then it crosses over with the two papers, because we are awarding grant money to Age UK, for example. And so I am assuming part of that is to pay for the services that they're providing to our residents and our communities. And then are we giving them free space, or is there a charge for them to use our accommodation? Our communities.
Yes,
I'm sorry, it crosses both papers.
No, it's fine. I can take the point in terms of the use of the supported housing scheme spaces. We haven't ever charged, because we felt that it kind of brings a sense of community into the schemes, and because the activities that voluntary sector organisations like Age UK provide at the schemes. It's kind of open to the residents there, so we haven't ever taken a decision to charge them for the use of the venue. It is something that we can consider going forward, but to date, it's felt it's benefited the wider tenants within that scheme and within the local area. So to date, there hasn't been a change.
So surely there is some comparison, say, hiring a space at the Old Town Hall or, you know, at the ferry, or even here, if you used to hire space. And most of the charities that run in those communal lounges, we are paying for them to do this, and we're giving them the facility free. I just feel that there should be potentially a charge there. I'm not going to be a small meal, but I feel that it's a bit double-handed going on.
So I think just to come back on what Ollie said, I think we need to consider that very carefully, because we're not hiring out the facility to Age UK. We are engaging with Age UK to deliver services for our residents that we identify would be mutually beneficial to our residents as part of reducing social isolation, improving confidence and enablement activity to enable them to live confident and healthy lives within our supported housing schemes. So we would have to look at that very carefully, given that part of the supported housing delivery programme encompasses activities such as that to enable health and wellbeing activity. So that activity is delivered in partnership rather than in isolation. So we're not commissioning Age UK specifically to deliver detailed activity for residents, but we can certainly explore that as part of the wider supported housing review and offering to residents.
I take your point. I absolutely agree with you with that perspective. But my thought was that we are in a position where we have to charge. The communal halls are used by external bodies, even if they are charitable, and delivering in partnership with officers.
I think Councillor Diani might want to come in.
There is a potential revenue stream.
From one of my briefs, I understood that these voluntary sectors are fairly stretched and they don't really quantify the grant value. So what we're giving them as a grant doesn't really mean that they were taking a work in return. What my understanding is they do a lot more already, and the grant doesn't really quantify the work they do. So in one way, it sounds like we're paying them a grant, and why, you know, they're using our free space, but it's a little bit other way around, that they are actually not getting enough money for what they do. The grant is just to do the bare minimum cover, but they do usually a lot more for us in terms of providing for our residents. So it's just part of the brief, I understood.
Yeah, I think it feels a lot like we wouldn't pay a training provider and then ask them to pay us for using the space to train us. As we're asking Age UK to give us a service for these people who are quite isolated. And obviously these spaces are where people live as well. That's how I see it. I think that's what's coming across from the officers.
Just to comment on it, presumably if we did charge them, then they would have good grounds for applying for an increased grant, and we would just create work for ourselves in terms of administering it. It doesn't seem to be a very rational way of approaching services for the benefit of the community.
Any other questions on this, Councillor Adeleke?
I'm not too sure whether we're asking general questions now or.
So on this item, agenda item 6. If we're all done on item 6, so we can move on to item 7. Very happy. Is your question on this agenda item, Councillor?
I'm not too sure. That is why if I just ask the question, if it is not, then I will apologize. In the presentation back in the chambers, you mentioned about the proposed investment in new council houses. Okay. Are there going to be any investment in recreation like playgrounds and things like that, or you are just going to focus on new council houses?
I think the capital programmes that we're proposing for future years. I think there's a suite of investment across the board in terms of all areas of council activity. So we do have investment in delivery of new council housing stock. There are also investment pieces for our parks and open spaces included in that programme as well. So it is across the board to complement that.
So if you just take a ballpark figure, percentage 300% engagement, roughly how much will be on council houses and roughly how much will be on open spaces?
I don't want to speculate a percentage at the moment. Again, I can circulate that if that's something you're interested in. But I suggest if you have a look at the capital programme, you can actually sort of see the monetary value of the relative investment. So that is one of the appendices to this report. I think it's on this one. It's appendix I1. Sorry, not appendix I1. Appendix excuse me, I think it's appendix H to this report. But there is a capital appendix to this report which does detail out the capital programme, and you can see the level of investment in various different parts of council activity there. And I can also get that percentage figure circulated later if that's helpful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's all for agenda item 6. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which was the housing strategy.
Yeah, I'm happy to just lead on this to open it up. I've seen the pack with the report, cover report, and the actual draft strategy where we got up to, and the proposed action plan. I think it's fair to say that this is the culmination of probably 12 months worth of consultation, which has been really broad and really helpful. And I think it's helped shape this strategy to something which is very decorum focused, and it's had influence from residents, from our tenants, leaseholders, from members and the administration. And it feels to me like it's starting to get to where it needs to be, as it should at this stage of the process. So really you've got the senior team here, so any questions you've got from that, please fire away.
Also reading through it, when I was reading, I then was writing questions, they were then being answered, so I did find it was a really good item. Anyone have any questions on item 7? And my internet's just gone, so I've lost the agenda. Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
I'm looking at page 70. I think it's commitment 3, which talks about improved thermal efficiency across DBC stock. I'm just conscious that a lot of us who represent wards that have conservation areas, and these are, for those that are dealing with planning applications, very difficult in terms of properties being able to improve their energy efficiency because decorum will not permit them to, for example, put in double glazing, even if it's synthetic to the building. I'm just wondering if that's been factored into the sorts of levels we're going to have to be looking at in terms of those sorts of areas and the sorts of numbers of council houses we've got in those areas.
I think there's a number of strategies which feed into this. So sat underneath the overall strategy will be the asset management plan, where we will look at what we're doing there and some key decisions to make for the council around what we can fund. We've heard where we are with the finances previously and what we focus on to deliver the outcomes in here. So that will come back in greater detail within the asset management strategy next. But this is really the overarching ambition, if you like, and then we'll work out how we can get there. And each year we're going to meet and report on progress to date. So each year you get a report on what we said in this strategy and where we are, so we can track it and focus our work going forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Councillor Bates?
I have, and I can't find my space again. I don't know what's going on. In here, there was reference in the strategy around commitment 3, championing the provision of the safe, warm and dry homes. I appreciate, I think that is, that's the bit I wanted to speak to. I'm sorry, Chair, I've lost my space. There's no mention there of educating residents around how to keep their homes warm and safe and dry. And in particular, I'm thinking of, say, managing damp or mould, or how to report issues if they haven't.
What is there?
Is it?
It's the last one.
Oh,
Three.
yeah. Is it still in 12? Am I in the right space?
It's page 17.
Page 17.
Empowering residents through education to support them to live well in their homes, which I assume is a polite way of saying.
We even had a workshop last month to tackle damp and mould in a partnership.
Yeah, with the recent policy as well, and how we're going to tackle with that mold condensation going forward.
Yeah. I just thought that it belonged there, but if it's later on, that's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Any comments? So that takes you agenda item 8, which is voluntary. Thank you.
That one's for me. Chair, if I could just update members before I start on this. I'm more than thrilled to be able to report that I've been successful in recruiting to the head of communities and leisure post, and that person will be in place from the 8th of January. Also made an offer that's been accepted to the head of arts and culture. So both of the new heads of service posts that are relevant to this committee, we've been successful in appointing to. So I'll bring them along to the earliest possible committee after they start to meet you.
One more to go.
There'll be a couple more to go, but you know. So those were successful, so that's fine. A very kind of like lengthy process, but we got there in the end. And it's just to reassure members, somebody with a wealth of experience has managed leisure management contracts, done voluntary sector commissioning before, as well as a range of other related services. So yes, very fortunate to have been able to appoint him. So, yes, thank you. So with regards to the voluntary and sector commissioning report, I won't dwell on it. And thank you to those that were able to attend your member briefing last week. Just in short though, this is summarising proposals that will be presented to Cabinet next week in terms of the approach we're taking to funding the 4 main voluntary sector contracts as identified in the report, moving away from the previous procurement exercise that was undertaken in 2016 towards a direct award of grants. That is following quite an extensive consultation exercise, not only with our voluntary and community sector partners, including a conference in May that I think I've spoken about before, but with also internal colleagues such as Natasha, who also use these contracts and whose services benefit from these contracts, as well as market research and other authorities' approaches. Anyway, so this approach is being recommended. It provides a sort of a mature, flexible approach that supports feedback from the voluntary sector in terms of sustainability for themselves and having a longer term ability to plan. And we'll be also running alongside that as part of the funding agreements. We'll be seeking information back from those voluntary sector partners that will enable us to spot trends, changes in support that's being asked for from our residents, how that might inform our own services, and will just enable us to make sure that we get good demographic data and, as I say, can spot the trends in changing demand. So I won't dwell any more on that. I think that's a very whistle-stop tour of the proposals, yeah, and we've taken this to commercial board as well as through SLT and other CLT colleagues.
I thought this was a really good one, especially the idea of reducing social isolation. That's obviously still huge following COVID. Were there any comments on this report before it went to Cabinet? Councillor Banks?
Just reiterating what I said in the training session, really. Originally, there were 5 contracts. The 5th one was around substance abuse. And although I don't expect it to be added in, I would just like reassurance that that particular vulnerable group, particularly in the light of issues around the cost of living and all the other issues that brings forward, I think that is a concern, especially with the increase in cannabis smoking across our estates. I think everyone here has probably got some issue around drug-related cannabis smoking because knows what else they're getting up to. I know it's an issue that the police recognise, and that we don't have anything in place to support people that are trying to come away from substance abuse. Although it may not be appropriate to have a contract as such, but that particular group of distressed individuals, that they are being supported.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Just to confirm, I've worked closely with Diane in respect of engagement around the contracts. The reasoning for no direct decorum-focused funding in relation to drug and alcohol substance misuse is because we're engaging closely with Hertfordshire County Council in respect to the core-funded commissioned services in relation to the complex needs strategy. So that particularly focuses on funding and commissioning of organisations in relation to drug and alcohol abuse, mental health, domestic abuse and homelessness, of which DrugLink and organisations like Change Grow Live are funded across Hertfordshire to deliver services as part of wider housing related support contracts. And then organisations locally such as DENS and other local services providing activity to our residents are provided additional funding to deliver activity in partnership with organisations such as DrugLink to residents through their programmes.
This was the same answer we got in training.
Sorry, I was just going to say what Natasha said, which is when I went to visit DENS a couple of years ago now, I think it was, they had a lot of publicity about helping people come off cannabis, and I had a conversation with one of the staff there about how many people, for example, might be self-medicating with cannabis because of the lack of services for people with ADHD and special needs. So it is very complex, but I was really pleased to see that DENS took a proactive attitude to that. And I was also asking about how we could maybe engage more with maybe young people who've never had the opportunity to have an education, health and care plan or a diagnosis through school to try and get them the education that they deserve that have been denied them. So I just was aware of that already, but obviously Natasha's outlined it much better than I could.
And I think all the benefit of having all of your voluntary sector organisations core-funded by Hertfordshire County Council means they come under the umbrella of Hertfordshire County Council's complex needs strategy, but also kind of focusing on clear approaches around things like making every adult matter and mental health agendas. So it ensures that all of our agencies are working consistently to same common goals.
I think also this is something that Josh, in the role of sort of looking at neighbourhoods, and there's teams such like the Joint Action Group, and look at the community support with like the police and other people come along, don't they, and they support in this sort of thing. They identify drug use, and obviously then there's things like the services for young people, and it does come under, I think, looking at those briefs of the charities, Hearts Age UK, Relate, and even Community Action Decorum, they all will dip into sort of drugs support, because it does come under things, and it can be, as Councillor Pringle touched on, it can be self-medication even for isolation. So I think that can come under all of these different brackets, and I think Spectrum, CGL, they do amazing work in Hertfordshire. That's really, really good to hear. Any other comments on Councillor Adeleke?
Just a general question to Natasha. Your department, in addition to what you've been explaining, I know over the years you've done a lot of work on homelessness. Okay. How do you meet with all the agencies? Is the Borough Council the head of putting all these agencies together to discuss various things?
So we work very closely with Hertfordshire County Council, and we sit on a number of county-wide and regional groups in relation to homelessness and migration. But we also lead and co-chair a number of subgroups across the county in relation to strategic housing and supported accommodation. And then specifically each local authority, district and borough will have specific homeless forum networks. Decorum has its own local network with all of our core-funded organisations organisations and commissioned partners that work to support vulnerable adults and residents in Dacorum. So those forums meet typically once a quarter, and they work together to review and deliver strategic activity linked to the homeless and loss income strategy, and also annually provide a rough sleeper delivery plan to undertake targeted action and interventions locally. And we have similar governance frameworks for activity around community safety and domestic abuse.
That's all good to go. Everyone approves, no changes for it goes to cabinet. Noted, thank you, Diane. You can,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
So we're now moving on to the last agenda item, because there isn't a 9.
Do you want to do the action points
Which we do, yeah.
full plan first, and then we can then go to?
Yeah. So action points. Diane, before you run, there is one that was for you. We visit the Adventure Playground, but you said we were going to table that and sort of do it amongst ourselves, weren't we?
Yeah, I think post-Christmas is part of the development programme, yeah.
So that's, yeah. Mark Cannell has answered the question on the update for the solid wall properties. I don't know. Wants to come in there or happy with what's in front of us?
No, sorry, Chair. I'm happy with what's in front of you, but happy to take any further clarification.
We're happy with that.
Could we just turn Mark's volume down a bit?
You're too loud, Mark.
It's quite frightening.
You can't have enough of the Brummie accent, surely.
There was a couple on here.
So we're still, Chair, engaging with member support to identify a suitable date to reschedule the allocations training. And then I think the next item related to the performance report for communities. That wasn't on the agenda at the last session. Members were querying when that was going to be rescheduled.
I'll confirm that with my colleagues, yeah. So.
Thank you. I think you just answered the one that was Councillor Gianni on the training. So that's all the action points from last time. Forward plan. Don't think has there been any changes or any requests for anything to change. Is there anything members would like to see on the forward plan that's not already on there? I mean, if there is ever anything that members would like to see, and you could always propose and send things through. It's always good to see. Get some pressure off the officers as well. No, I think that's good. And now on to the last agenda item, which is part 2. So we don't have anyone. That's going to be.